I'm Daniel, I'm the technical director here at RW Supply & Design, and today I want to talk about fixing a delaminated or a sheared engineered board. Delamination or shear is just when an engineered board comes apart along its layers, and so usually this happens in part of the board, not the whole board, and you can see it with like a peaked or a curled edge or something like that. Oftentimes, the easiest way to fix these boards is just to do a board replacement. So you just pull the board out of the floor and you replace it with matching material. We have another video that shows how to do that we can link in this video. But today I want to talk about how to fix these with a glue injection instead of a board replacement. So sometimes if you don't have replacement material that matches, or you don't have the correct type of floor to be able to replace the board with, or in the case of this floor, if you have like a floating floor or something where it's easier to fix the board in place as opposed to removing it and putting a new one in, then what I do is I use a glue injection. I inject glue between those layers that have come apart, and I push the layers back together, let the glue set up, and then the board is once again solid like it was when it was first installed. So the things I use to do this type of repair: I've got a trash bag to put my glue rags in. I use gloves to make sure I don't get glue on my hands, rags to wipe up the glue. I've got my utility knife, a couple of pry bars. I usually use a putty knife and a pry bar. I've got my glue injection kit, some blue tape, and then for this particular repair, I've got a 23 gauge pin nailer I'm going to use to pin the board together. In order to qualify whether or not a delaminated board can be fixed with a glue injection, I really look for three different things. The first is, can I pry the layers apart enough to be able to get a needle in and inject glue? Because if I can't get glue between the layers, then obviously I can't do a glue injection. Two, can I push that layer back down so that it's even with the other boards? That way I know once I put glue in there, I'll be able to push the board down, let the glue set up, and have that board match the rest of the floor. And then three, is the delaminated or separated spot so large that it's really not practical to get enough glue in there to make the structure of the board solid again? I take some blue tape, and then I put the blue tape across the seam of the board because I don't want to get epoxy onto the board. And then I just take a utility knife, and I just score my tape on the seam of that board. So now I'll be able to inject glue in there, and then once I'm done with the repair, I can pull the tape and I won't have epoxy on top of the board. Pry those layers apart enough to be able to get the needle in to do our injection. So step one is going to be prying these apart. And usually I use a putty knife like that to kind of get enough room for something that's going to be a little bit more powerful and easier to pry with. So sometimes I'll try and put two on either side of where I'm going to do the injection, just so that I can get the needle in and get it a little further back in the board. And then I also make a little spot for me to be able to set my glue kit, because I usually find myself doing the glue injection and then trying to figure out where to put my glue kit so that it doesn't leak on the rest of the floor. I've got my glue kit here. It's usually a glue gun along with a 2-part fast set epoxy, a mixing tip, which is going to mix the 2 parts that come out of here. As they go through here, it mixes both of them together. And then a needle, which allows me to get a little further back into that void. We will assemble all of these. Sometimes this comes off. That needle will come off, especially when you're prying around in the board. So I like to make sure that that is really on there solid, and then If I want to be a little neurotic about it, I can put some tape on. We'll get our glue set up in the glue gun. And then get our glue tip on. All right. One thing I'll point out is if you have multiple boards that you want to repair, I would prep every board so that you can inject glue as you go across, because this glue will set up in the tip, in the mixing tip, within about 5 minutes or so. Really having two people to do that is helpful because one person can be injecting glue and the other one can come behind them and make sure the boards are pushed together and either have weight on them or pin them back together. My goal is to get glue as far back as I can, all the way down this edge. And I want to get so much glue in there that it kind of pools out of the board as I push it back together. Because if it's pooling out this way, it's also seeping back towards any void that could be further than the needle reaches. First, I want to make sure I have glue coming out. There we go. We're good to go on that. So now I am going to start injecting. And I really want to make sure I'm getting plenty of glue as far back as I can. The other thing I want to make sure is that I do get glue right here on the edge. Just getting glue on that front edge. It's going to ensure that I don't get a lip on the board. Okay. I'm going to wipe my tools off, and then I'm going to wipe any little excess glue. Then what I try to do is I try to push and work the glue from the front edge back, just to make sure I've got a good amount in there. Be careful if you get any glue on the floor, make sure and wipe that off. It can be a little messy as it starts to come out of the boards. So then I try to make sure the glue side of my rag does not touch over there on more boards. All right. It can help to just step on the board, make sure you're getting it as flat as possible. The last step I do is to pin the board back in place with the 23 gauge pin nailer. I like using a pin nailer because you can't see the pins and it keeps that lip down while the glue sets up. It also adds a little bit of holding power to that edge as well. You could put weight on the edge of that board and weigh that down. I'd leave the weight on there for about an hour or so until that glue is all the way set up, and then take it off and remove your tape. So with this, I'm just going to go along, and I've got 3/4 inch thick pins, or I've got 3/4 long pins. Make sure that your pins aren't so long that they're going to hit concrete or something below. After that's done, I just want to make sure I clean as much glue up, and then I want to pull my blue tape before the glue is completely set and makes it a little bit harder. I pull the tape towards the seam as opposed to away, because if you pull it away and that glue is tacky, then sometimes the tape will rip. Just gonna clean up any extra tape, anything right along that joint. So this is how I fix a delaminated or a sheared board using a glue injection instead of a board replacement. If you have any questions about this process, feel free to leave those in the comments below. Also, check out our YouTube channel for a bunch more technical videos like this. And don't forget to like and subscribe.